Hi, I'm Tina Lunderville. This is my semester project. My project was on the 94-6 compare and contrast. So we learned in class that 94% of deaf babies are born into hearing families, and 6% of deaf babies are born into deaf families. What I compared and contrasted was decision-making processes and what each family really faces, because it may seem like it's a really easy decision for deaf parents of deaf babies versus hearing parents to deaf babies. So overall, raising children is difficult anyways. We all want to have the best decisions, make the best decisions, and give them the best life that they can have. So when you have a baby and the baby is deaf, it's really not something that you're expecting. It's another decision process that you have to go through. So this can be really overwhelming. So let me begin with there are so many outside pressures for each side of the spectrum here. A lot of deaf families seem to admit like they may have an easier time with the decisions, but it's not necessarily so. There's so many outside pressures involved when a deaf baby is born. The pressure to try and fix a deaf or hard of hearing baby is incredible. Everyone has an opinion, and everybody is very willing to share. I found a lot of that while researching and doing my internet searches. A lot of statements are, it's a hearing world, and that would be best for your child is to be brought up and taught in this hearing world. While on the other hand, if you on that same aspect, if you sign to your child will never learn to speak. There are both sides of this whole spectrum here. So when it comes to deaf parents with deaf children, they hear if you don't sign to your child, she'll grow up to hate you and turn against you and turn completely into deaf culture in the deaf community. They also hear that your daughter or your son has the right to their natural language of ASL. These two comments lean toward that the hearing world is bad, and that's hard to swallow. Some parents of deaf babies tend to deny or not even accept the fact that their child will be different from them, and it's difficult for them to embrace. So hearing parents are encouraged to get educated and get involved in deaf community as soon as possible. Taking the steps to immerse themselves in the deaf community can be really overwhelming and very confusing. There was one parent of baby, her name was Lizzie. She was diagnosed as deaf at 7 months old. The parents had been prepped to make decisions on how they were going to communicate with their child. So the decisions that they make are lifelong decisions. So they attended a workshop. They were surrounded by people signing and communicating with each other. And then when the workshop started, they had an interpreter there. And as the person was signing, they realized that wasn't the interpreter. The interpreter was this person speaking in English. So they were a little taken aback by that. And the mom, got really overwhelmed. She thought to herself that this has nothing to do with her. This has nothing to do with the way that her daughter and her family will be. And deep inside, she felt the grief. So whatever they choose, this path is going to be impactful for the child forever. The good part now is that 97% of all infants are screened for hearing loss in the United States when they're born. With this advancement, with this identification early, they're able to plan and make decisions. Early intervention by 6 months of age shows better language outcomes than the child who do not have any kind of decisions made, and leaves a perception of intervention quickly. I don't like the word intervention because to me it seems like something needs to be stopped, something needs to be changed, and that you're doing something bad, so you need to make it better. It bothered me a little bit when I had that word intervention. Just because something isn't the same as you doesn't mean it's not normal or not right. The sooner the families decide a method of communication, the better bonded the family will be altogether. I do agree with the fact that families need time to decide on their method of communication and their methodology of doing this. So without proper education, some may think that the cochlear implant is the fix-all. There are many testimonials that I've read, that I've watched, about the implants, that they're wonderful, that it works for everybody, that, what an amazing thing they could have done. So for hearing parents, this sounds like a cure. There are many aspects that need to be considered when they think about the cochlear implant. There could be damage, permanent damage to the facial muscles, and once the surgery is done, there's no turning back. There's also limitations when it comes to, from what research I had, for sports. But then we saw in Sound and Fury with Heather that she was quite an athlete. The recipient will need to learn how to hear and how to incorporate those sounds into the English language. The surgery is really invasive, as they have to drill into the skull. There are points, as stated in Sound and Fury, that the earlier the surgery is done, the better. But it also showed that Heather's mother got her implant in her 30s, and that she was able to work to make it work for her. When hearing parents think this is the cure for deafness, they usually fail to incorporate ASL into the children's life. To me, this is a heartache, because this child is going to be bilingual anyways. The English language is not ASL. When somebody's trying to communicate with this child, it's better off that they have a solid learned language to begin with, and then they can transfer over and learn the English language. I think a base is really important. Hearing parents are not experienced in the deaf community, so they don't see the added value to learning ASL, and that would also mean that they would, or they should, learn ASL. And that's not just for the parents, the other siblings also. And I know from experience that this is not an easy task. Heather's parents in Sound and Fury were both deaf. She had deaf siblings, deaf grandparents. Her parents were content with their deaf family. Her paternal grandparents were not. They were very verbal about their concerns and their objections, even going as far as calling it child abuse, which were very strong accusations, and I really don't agree with it. The Artanian family did what they thought was best by moving to Maryland and immersing into a deaf community, and they really made strides. They were happy. But when they needed to come back home for health reasons, the support of their family was given to them only with consequences, or they had to get their children implanted, or they would not have the support of their paternal family, because they really backed them into a corner as far as I thought. They were all happy at the end. They got their implants. They worked through it. But again, I was surprised that it happened as it transitioned. And Heather eventually getting her second implant. The decision to me was heartbreaking, and they're all life-changing, Deaf parents of deaf children have the same tough decisions as hearing parents. In a study done in the Journal of American Academy of Psychiatry, they said that children were neither precocious nor delayed in their development, deaf babies and hearing parents. And this was referring to their attachment and independence to their caregivers, except when they were separated or they asked for permission to be separated. The kids had anxiety and were very clingy when they got back. And the research said the importance of the sociolinguistic environment for optimal development of deaf children was lacking there. So basically what they're saying is that without that social verbal skill, they were not developing socially. This is where mainstreaming can come in. This is where less restrictive learning can come in. Will help to expose the children to socializing and interacting with others outside of family or outside of a small deaf community, if that's what they have. The decision that faced parents with deaf babies, whether hearing, or deaf, are tremendous overall. There's no language barrier between a deaf mother and a deaf child, and there's no language barrier between a hearing child and hearing parents. And so these decisions will impact their lives forever. A deaf child should have the opportunity to learn ASL, which would give them the freedom to communicate in their natural language. If later, as they grow, they're interested in the cochlear implant, then they should research it. And many interviews should take place. The interview should be with successes as well as disappointments. The whole spectrum of the process should be actually, heard, so that they know what they're getting, what they're going to hear, how the process is going to work. The amount of work needs to be highlighted. The hours of therapy to make sure that they're communicating properly with the English language. Also, with the ADA, there are stringent laws for discrimination, and I'm sure there's still some places that don't adopt these, and hopefully they're few and far between. But anybody can be what they want to be. It takes hard work from hearing parents, and it takes hard work from deaf parents. Thank you.